want people who run toward AI. We want people who are the change, right? Like they're not subject to change, they are making the change.
There's been a lot of talk recently about AI can collapse roles. Do you think about role collapsing as you build out the company?
A lot of people who are still using it for, oh, it helps me write better email. That's so basic now that it's almost a turn off when you hear that answer. We got 40% implemented already at the end of the sales cycle. Using AI as an aid, not as a way to become lazy. Be the storm in our space. We're not going to be subject to weather conditions. We are the weather, right? So we make things happen.
Welcome to Whispered Hiring, the podcast where we talk with senior leaders about how they find, vet, attract, and grow go-to-market talent. I'm Andy Mullet from Whispered. Today, I'm joined by Sri Ganesan. Sri is the CEO of Rocketlane. They recently raised another round to continue the growth, which is amazing. Sri and I met a couple months ago, and I've just really been impressed by how he thinks about company growth, GTM, and product as well too. Rocketlane is an AI-powered professional services automation platform. They're not just changing how you automate the operational side, but also the implementation itself, which I think is really interesting. I got to live this world when I was at Box, where we built a huge PS organization and just saw the power of it. So it's neat to see what you're building. Prior to that, Sri is a serial builder of companies. He has 2 other startups, and then he spent some time with Freshworks building products there as well too. Sri, welcome. Great to have you.
Thanks for having me on, Andy.
No, I've been looking forward to this one. I guess maybe we just kick it off with you recently raised, probably in the last 2 or 3 months, at least you announced it. I'm curious how that changes how you think about hiring and building the team, especially when everyone's now rethinking building their companies with AI first, and that like you get a chance, you have all this capital to continue to grow faster, but you also have the opportunity to step back and think, do you grow your company differently? I'm curious how you think about that.
Yeah, I think definitely the round comes at a nice time. I think we have opportunity to bring on new people into the company. The game changed a bit now. I think it got more serious is how I look at it. And I feel every one of us, every company is reinventing itself. Every person is reinventing how they work. So now I think it's a time where you can actually ask people how they have been reinventing how they work, because AI has been around for long enough that you should be able to see examples of what they've done. I think last year was maybe too soon to ask people for proof, but now I think the way we think of it, we want people who run toward AI. We want people who are the change, right? Like they're not subject to change, they are making the change. So I think it's a great time to hire new people and have them show us how they're doing things differently. Our own experience has been, I think, when you're deep in build mode, when you're deep in, when you're having a lot of growth as a company, it's hard to make the time to reinvent how you work. And those who do still manage to make the time to do that stand out, right? So I think that's what we want to see more of.
I love it. I feel like that personality we've always been looking for, always, but it's become even more important. Like I wanted people that would think differently, think how they would work, push the boundaries. But the questions I asked to evaluate that have changed. Do you think at all about, there's been a lot of talk recently about AI can collapse roles, right? Instead of having SDR and AE, for example, or in marketing, you probably have design, branding, messaging, all of that in one. Do you think about role collapsing as you build out the company and grow it?
Absolutely. I think this is very much the reality where some of the roles become people who set the guidelines, people who guide AI or set its boundaries, help it do its job better. Essentially managing agents. For example, even for let's say graphics, right? Like within marketing, hey, there's someone who does design work. Now, how does the team that does the design instead become a team that enables everyone to do design on their own. That becomes the change. And so there is going to be people are going to have superpowers attached to them from other teams around them, so that you don't need to grow every team. Instead, you are able to leverage these superpowers which are helping others in the org scale. I don't think roles completely go away, but I think some of them are going to be able to scale themselves through others in a better way. Uh, but from a role collapsing perspective, my view is post sale and pre sale, like the sales engineer to implementation, is going to shrink, in the sense that even in our team, one of the things I've challenged our sales engineering leader to do is to say, hey, how can you get every customer who's going through the sales process to them feeling, hey, we got 40% implemented already at the end of the sales cycle. And that's very much possible because our own tool automates a lot of the actual setup work now. So if someone has templates for projects that they want to configure, it used to be something that you give to a team and they set it up manually, or you need to configure custom fields for reports and so on. So all of that used to be manual tasks that used to be done. Now it's all just give AI work to do and it does the work. You just need to point it to the right documentation or the right content somewhere, and it all gets done, which means you can actually make so much more progress faster. And so every team needs to challenge itself on what the new future for their team, what outcomes they're working towards, and how it's going to merge. I think, pre-sale, post-sale, uh, the journey of getting a customer set up, getting them to value is going to happen more upfront now.
I love that. I think historically, and I actually started my whole career in Box on the post sale operations side, and you're waiting for somebody to throw it over the wall. I think what your tool is doing and how you can start to use AI to automate some of that really does start to bring those things together. I also think historically, everyone's working on different systems. I'm kind of resisting the urge because I could spend a whole hour talking about what you're building, how you're doing it, how you're integrating into the pre and post sale motions. How do you how do you think about evaluating these skill sets that we were talking about? The AI skill set, the running towards the action oriented side. Like, what is how? What are you using within the company to make sure you're bringing in the right people?
I think even a simple question like what's surprised you most, or like what's your biggest aha moment with AI, helps, you know, it creates a big partition. There are people who are in the know, there are people who are not. And you can very clearly see there are a lot of people who are still using it for, oh, it helps me write better emails, or, oh, you know, all my action items and summaries from meetings and whatnot. Well, that's so basic now that it's almost a turn off when you hear that answer. Versus there is so much more that people can automate. Like, are they familiar with browser agents? Are they familiar with, have they put Claude Cowork to use in interesting ways? Like, what are they actually doing beyond what the company is enabling them to do? Uh, where they're experimenting, they're learning, they're aware of how much can be done with AI. I think that's what I look for really. What are they building even outside of work, right? All of that tells you whether they will make the time to go outside of the day to day. Because I can see in within our company, we're running at a very very fast pace, and it's very hard when you're running fast to make time to educate yourself. But those with the genuine interest will still make the time, will still uh, you know block, even if it means, hey, I'm going to spend half a Sunday on trying out something with AI. Their curiosity will make them do that. And that's what separates those who are going to be more AI fluent from others today. Do they have that enough genuine interest to learn, to get ahead, to take care of their careers in a way?
I couldn't agree more. I mean, plus one, everything you said. I think. Oh, I've definitely learned that you sit next to somebody and you task them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm using Claude," and you're like, "Well, which version? And how are you using it?" And what I've learned is somebody, the people that are most passionate can't stop talking about it, which is really powerful. And then just the ability, like some of the smartest people I know, I will have weekly or every other week, like Claude code discussion sessions around what are you building, how are we building it. And it's, I think people are really, people are almost moving faster on the side projects than they are on the work because you're limited by what you can do, of what systems you can bring in and what security. So it's really fun. It's neat to see how you're evaluating it. Maybe shifting gears a little bit, like as you think about growing the company, the executive suite, like how do you set up your executive team for success? And what do you think is necessary to kind of have a well functioning executive team?
I think part of an interview process is also just understanding how execs, you know, uh, what they value in the rest of the org, what they see as positive experiences they've had versus negative experiences that, that they've had. If they've seen an exec team that functions as one team, they know what great looks like, right? And so you want to hear more about the stories from their past about what worked well, what didn't work well. Where is there a lot of like finger pointing versus collaboration, right? So those are the things you want to hear more about. For us, we also look at how action oriented leaders are. Are they able to make decisions quickly and move forward? uh, how much do they wait for things to happen? I, have one example of a customer success leader who we hired, VP customer success, who, when I was asking about a 30, 60, 90-day plan, he said, the first 30 days, this was a few years ago, we were at like 400 customers. And he actually said, hey, you're at a unique point where 400 customers, you know what, I could actually probably start calling 10, 15 of them each day, see how many I can connect to and have real conversations with them, which is very different from what typically people do, right? Like, people expect a customer success manager to make an intro. They're waiting for permission to get in front of the customer instead of just, let's make a call and understand what's happening in their world. Hey, I joined as a VP in this company. You're all a customer. I just want to hear from you. And I'm sure you'll get more insight and conversation happen faster if you take this approach versus wait for a CSM to feel comfortable to make that introduction to you. So we look for that dynamism in leadership, uh, because I think then they are able to move things forward with their teams faster. We look for who brings a vision for their team, because I think that makes for more inspirational leadership if they are able to set a vision for their own org. Um, yeah, these are some of the things which we found as useful in identifying the right leaders as we build the company.
I like that. I I look back and I can say, like for example, at Box, just an incredibly well run organization, super mature, like dialed in on metrics, executive team functioning very well. And I think you're right. One question I always ask people is, where have you done your best work? And if it ends up in complaining and all of that, they have not probably actually ever done great work. They've just kind of been they maybe have like had great sounding rules, but they haven't done it. And so I like the idea of listening for where they've been at well functioning teams before. Is there any questions you ask to try to suss that out, or how would you learn about that?
Yeah, I do ask them about like um, the best exec teams they've been part of. What do they learn from that experience, etc. I do also ask people about what did they learn in the last 2 years. And very often, if it's senior leadership, there should be something that they learned about an exec team, how it functions as well, right? Like there needs to be growth that happens in every area of your span of work, including working well with other leaders. And then, of course, um, I think we're in a world where we want more people who come in with like a growth mindset, who come in with a "Hey, there is more to learn" uh, sort of approach to things versus, hey, I know everything, I'm going to apply what I know over here. uh,
Yes.
and hence, those are the kind of things which we probe on Are they actively learning every year? Are they becoming a better version of themselves constantly? How do they learn? That's something I ask them. Like, where do you learn from? How do you learn? And
Mm.
um, also, what did you learn from specific people? Like, if you had someone you were reporting to, what did you learn from them? Or what did you learn from people who reported to you? So you need to be, you know, evolving by assessing what you can get from everyone around you, surrounding you. So that's something we look for.
I couldn't agree more. It's hard to suss that out, but I like the other one you had said before we hit record was how did you prepare for the interview, which I think was a really interesting one as well too, right? Like trying to understand people's thought processes and getting deep in there is a great way to go.
Yeah, I think a lot of people now just have like maybe a couple of questions they throw into chat gpt, and it gives them certain answer, or maybe cloud, whatever, right? And they've come in with, here's the questions I want to ask the CEO, here's what I've learned about the company. uh, I try to go deeper to understand, have they truly internalized what the company offers as value for different types of customers, even, right? Like, if you're applying for leadership role, you want to truly, and not just a leadership role, I think a sales role, whatever it is in, I want you to do proper research on the company, not just like chat gpt help me prepare for this meeting, because very often it gets it wrong. You haven't done your research, and this will show in customer meetings as well, right? Like, if you just ask AI and leave it at that versus do your own assessment to guide what you want to find more about using AI, I think it gives you two very different answers, or two very different outlooks on uh, what your approach should be with a customer. And I think you want to make sure that you want someone who's thorough, who's using AI as an aid, not as a way to become lazy.
You've kind of defined I mean, the space has sort of existed before, but what you guys have done seems to be dramatically expanding the market, which is so impressive. That also means that there are not a lot of companies where you're like, I need somebody with that profile or that profile. Like, how do you think about finding like company profile? I think we've talked about mindset, which is really interesting. Maybe shifting to like, are you looking for specific industry experiences? Like maybe if you think through like a CS leader or a sales leader or somebody like that, what's going to tell you that they're going to be able to sell into your target audience well?
I think I want to look at companies that have had multiple products and complex products, like financial products, etc., so that we know these are people who can grasp new concepts, move into adjacencies, etc., because our ambition keeps expanding every year. We dream up more that we want to accomplish working with our customers, and then we make those dreams a reality, which means people need to be able to learn new things entirely. Like, what started as an onboarding product later became a PSA, and the onboarding to PSA was always on course. It was part of the plan, but uh, in 2025 we evolved the ambition further and said it's not just PS operations, but actual agents that do configuration work, migration work, documentation work, testing work. We're going to launch all of that. People need to be able to grasp what that means, and how they're going to pitch that differently to a customer. Every few months, or every few weeks even, there's new messaging that we want to test on the market, and it can't be just me testing it and taking it to market. It needs to be a whole team, all of us doing it together. And so you need people who are able to learn on the fly, apply what they learned quickly. So those are the things that we look for. Like, even in an interview, if we give them a new scenario, are they able to? Some people are, they come in with an approach of, I want to tell you everything that I have done, but
Hmm.
um, I want to test you for, are you able to learn, uh, think on your feet today and answer questions that we have, and put your energy behind thinking together. You don't need to get to the right answer, but can you show me how you're thinking about it, right? And sometimes people have an inertia towards that, thinking process in an interview, because they feel, hey, they put a lot of effort into preparing something and coming to the meeting to show off what they've already done. But hey, you know what? We need people who are able to think on their feet now and work with us, answer those questions.
It's really impressive, by the way. I've seen probably 100 like onboarding tools in my life, but very few people have figured out how to unlock that bigger market. I think one of the fun things is anybody coming to work with you guys, they've bought and implemented software before, right? So in theory, they should understand it, and it's something that can fit for a lot of people, which is fun. But impressive to see how you guys have really uncovered the space as you've iterated through it with AI. Um, how do you go about, say you need a new senior leader, like how do you go about finding that one? Is it recruiting? Is it your network? Like what is your process, and what have you kind of honed over the years of like how do you find new people at the senior levels?
See, we are always going to have um, a recruiting partner
Yeah.
involved. It could be a search firm. It uh, could be someone like you, right? Like we have different uh, approaches to for different roles. Some of them we just know. Okay, if it's like a sales leader, we know a firm that we've worked with before, and we know we've gotten good candidates. Just take that approach. But we will always also try to activate as much as we can in our network,
Mhm.
uh, whether it's like our VCs or other leaders who have known us, who um, think highly of us, right? Like I think we have a lot of even customers who are very very bullish on us as a company, and it helps if we tap them and say, hey, you know what, is there someone? Even last week I had a CRO referral come in from one of our big customers, and uh, I think that's very valuable to get a bigger set of candidates that you can potentially tap into, because when it comes from someone who knows you as a company and they are referring someone from their network, I think it's more likely we can attract amazing candidates through that. And yeah, that's part of what we do. We also use our investors to vet candidates to as part of the interview process. So we have a exec partner from one of our VCs, 8VC, who actually is a very, very seasoned Valley exec. I really value their perspective on candidates that they're, you know, talking to, because it's a very different lens that they use to look at the candidate, and it's I look at them differently, but I get this additional set of perspectives from others that helps get a much more well-rounded picture of who we are trying to attract to the company, helps open my eyes when I have some blind spots to what they may be bringing to the table that I'm not seeing. Um, and likewise, it also helps bridge the gap the other way, right? Like if the candidate is not uh, s- seeing the potential in the company, the fact that someone on the investor side is helping them see that it's not coming from just inside, from like the founder, a biased founder, right? That also helps them with more clarity on why this may be a great opportunity for them.
I'd be curious on the investor slash board involvement in C-level hires. Like, is that a something that's different for every single hire you do, or is it something where you're formalizing, saying, no, I need a board member on the panel for every one of these, and then also is that panel also interacting just with you at the board level, or are they also working with the other people on the panel? I guess it's an interesting question because like it's a little I think when you're interviewing at a company, you interview with CEO, CPO, CMO, it makes sense. But then when you add the board member to the mix, it's an interesting dynamic. I'd be fascinated to hear how you do that and what works well and what doesn't.
Yeah, for me, I think it's not about board members doing it, but more about, uh, you know, right now I do take help from a couple of people from within those VC firms, not necessarily but the board members,
Hmm.
who bring certain lenses for certain roles. And it's helpful. It's not something I follow for every exec role, but for certain roles where we run a process a certain way, right? Like for example, for a sales leader role, we run a very thorough process. For let's say uh, customer success leadership, we have so many people in our network that we know we've like been close to in different ways that we look at it differently, and
Yeah.
have a lens of what we want. So I think it depends on the role. There isn't a strict rule around it. And for me, I know that our board is very supportive of which direction I finally go. So I don't need the board to say, "Hey, stamp, this person is good to go," from their perspective. But I get inputs from some of these key people who I trust. I like their judgment on some of the candidates. So uh, that's been our approach.
I like that. It's mature. I think I've done that in the past when I've been CEO. If I'm interviewing for a role that I have not hired or managed before or don't know personally, I'm gonna go find that person outside, right? Whether that I remember we were hiring a CPO and I didn't know how to do that, so I went and found that person. It sounds like you do the exact same thing, right? Like it's maybe in the engineering world you know it cold, and then in the revenue world you bring in an expert for different pieces of it as well.
Yes.
How do you think I heard a CEO of a unicorn recently said product market fit is like a treadmill now that we're in AI. Right? You come off of it and on it. And I see more and more CEOs saying, I know GTM is important, but I've just got to live on the product. Like, how do you balance both sides of that in your mind? It feels like product, I guess, has become more important than ever before because you can lose product market fit in a way that hasn't happened before. I'm curious how you think about that.
Yeah. Think about it all the time, to be frank. But I do have two co-founders who are also, one of them is our CPO, one of them is the CTO, and
Hmm.
both of them are also obsessing on the PMF every day. They're looking at what's changing in the world, what do we need to do more of, less of, and I become the conduit to test various messages. So my job is keep testing and keep bringing back the feedback. And did we together decide where to place our bets? But um, we at least have this constant gut check happening with you know the world is changing every single day. So there is enough messaging to test in the market to see what's going to resonate. And then um I think uh, we have enough momentum that we're able to test at scale quickly. So that helps because there's so many conversations happening. And that's part of how I think our expanded vision came into fruition. Last year, we were able to test how the message is sticking with people, and that, okay, this product will have great pull. Now we just need to make sure we can build it right. And now that it's built and launched, it's about ensuring that the consumption of the product happens. We've figured out some key areas where I think what drives adoption, what hinders adoption, and what sort of change management is needed within companies to make our product successful. So now we know uh, we can, and we don't approach it with a lens of, "Hey, these customers will be ready, these customers won't." We approach it with a lens of, how do we make this happen? Even in customers who aren't going to be ready yet, how do we make them ready? And it's sort of the, you know, uh, uh, at our sales kickoff, there is this gentleman who spoke and he used this phrase. He said, "Be the storm." And our approach is, we want to be the storm in our space. We're not going to be subject to weather conditions around us and say, "Hey, it was bad weather today or good weather today." Instead, we are the weather, right? So we make things happen.
I like that too. I have this fundamental, like you can, I think we'd all love to be able to will things into existence, but I think it's like if you believe and you see the market opportunity, which is the first part. It sounds like you've had the clarity, and now it's how do we once you have that clarity, now you know where the puck is going, and you can make sure everyone gets there, which is nice. Mm, Shifting over maybe like to the interview process, I'd be curious. Like, so you found a candidate that you're interested in. Like, how do you go through the eval process? Like, what are the do you have a philosophy on how your company interviews, or how do you think about that?
Honestly, we need to get better at this. I would say even the interviews that I do, sometimes I feel I brought the best out of the candidate.
Mhm.
Sometimes I feel maybe we didn't set it up for success. Uh, it could even be something, around what time of the day it was. Were you at your peak trying to do an interview, and like, did you have enough mind space to do a good job of the interview? It, can vary depending on what's happening before, after, immediately, etc. Let's say I have a webinar at 10 and I'm trying to do an interview from 9 to 10. Maybe it's not the best time. Your mind is slightly, drifting, trying to prepare for something else, etc. as well. Um, but also, I think from a process perspective, um, you know, there's always the selling and assessment that both need to happen. So how do we sequence that, so that you primed someone to want to work with you before, getting into just assessment mode where they may not even be convinced about the opportunity yet. So what's the point of trying to interview them at that moment, if they're not looking at this as, you want them to be thinking of you as their top choice when they're interviewing with you. So
Mm.
make that happen. uh, and then I think we typically start with the scorecard, what we want to uh, assess for. The scorecard is socialized with everyone on the panel. There needs to be enough, like, maybe there's a couple of rounds of independent reviewing of a person, and then there needs to be a little more concerted. Okay, here's what we found out so far. Here are the gaps in terms of our scorecard. Like, we need to figure out these things. Here's what we need to confirm on, where we're not confident, etc.
Mhm.
uh, but yeah, I think there's and obviously the scorecard itself looks very different for different roles and different stages of the company, so we need to keep evolving those as well.
Something you said triggered an interesting thought in my mind of like companies have, sometimes I have traditions just to, be different, right? And I remember one time I interviewed at Gusto and they were like, take your shoes off. You have to walk around the office in socks. And whatever those were, I feel like sometimes those traditions for those companies can help people stand out. Another thing we always said at Culture Amp was if your values don't have a con to them, they're not really values, right? So trying to make sure people understand what your business stands for and what's important to you, is interesting as well. How do you go about referencing somebody? Like that's an interesting topic that comes up on almost. We've now done. I think you're number 50 of our podcast series. 50 top CEOs and CROs, and everybody's got an opinion on references. I'd be curious yours.
I think when someone is out of a role already, it's much
Mhm.
easier to reference without causing any harm,
Yep.
uh, because you can go to anyone who's common in the network, um, and get inputs. I try to have a lot of connections with a lot of tech companies, founders of these companies, etc. as well. So it is very often someone is a ping away to ask about input on a candidate. Um, but at the same time, I think it's also I try to ask them, hey, what do you think this person would say, uh, as step one, right? And sometimes when it's positioned not as tell me about your strengths and weaknesses, but as what do you think this person would say, whether or not they are right about it, that brings out even more color on how what sort of feedback they've gotten, and so on. And then it becomes easier for you to find more through the right reference check. We When you're using a recruiting partner, they also have their sources to do um, the referencing, so we use that as well. And of course, I think with the firm like Insight Partners coming on board in our CDC, they have a vast library of a lot of execs that they've hired, looked at across their companies. It's actually even easier to go to them to say, hey, uh, tell me about this person. But I also believe people change over time, so I think it's not necessary that if something negative came through in a ref check doesn't mean it's always a no. It still means, hey, you want to use that to validate or confirm something that you already had a doubt on, right? Like it's not about finding a reason to reject someone from a conversation. It's more about you had a doubt in an area, you want to validate, hey, this person doesn't seem to be decisive about things. Is that true? Has that been a pattern before? Let's validate that.
I like that. And by the way, your point on these VCPE firms is amazing. Like they're constantly asking their entire network who is great, and their databases are impressive. One thing you said a couple minutes ago was when someone's out of a role, it's easier to do references on them. It made me wonder, how do you? I think there's definitely a stereotype of if people are out of roles, they're not as good in the market, right? But I'm curious, even the fact that you said that means you're open to considering both. Like, how do you look at somebody if they are in a role right now versus not in a role? Does that impact your thinking, or how do you evaluate that?
Uh, I think people are out of roles for various reasons, including like the company is not doing well, had to, you know, uh, reduce staff. And sometimes senior leaders get the axe faster because you save more money by, skipping a level. And I don't hold in today's market. I think people, all sorts of people
Yeah,
lose jobs. So I don't.
especially with product market fit going so fast as well, too,
Yeah,
right? Like it's
yeah.
yeah,
It's more about what were their lessons, right? For example, uh,
like that.
I was in Utah. I lived in Utah for 2 years, 2023 to 2025. And Utah is famous for building like BDR teams. And
Yeah, they are.
so we were building our BDR team in Utah at that point. And so we were interviewing a lot of BDR leaders, and a lot of them had actually lost their jobs from, there was just crazy growth that had happened. Everyone had just followed a playbook blindly, right? Like, hey, let's hire. If we need to make so much money, we need to hire so many BDRs. It doesn't matter if you're able to convert that, sell that, you haven't validated any of that. You just got the VC money, so you scale the team. And it's not like a step function growth of, okay, I validated, I can get to so much revenue. Eh, I've seen teams with like 32 BDRs and they're at like 3.5 million of revenue. Uh, so what did they learn from that experience, right? How would they do things differently? That matters more than the fact that they were the leader who made those decisions and scaled a certain way, because that was the known playbook at the time. No one questioned it at the time. But how will you do things differently the next round? That's the more important thing.
I like that a lot. I think I'll be listening more for that in all the interviews I do for folks. Maybe, one thing that may fit really well with what your product does, onboarding hires as well too. As we wrap up, like, do you have opinions on how you make a hire successful? Because I think you probably think about onboarding products now. I'm curious if you ever reflect on how do you make a new senior hire successful, or what are you watching for in that first couple months?
Hmm. I think there's so many variations of this. uh,
Yeah.
and we've tried different variations. I want them to be extremely hands-on from day one, right? Like,
Mm,
be not the, hey, let me watch and learn for the first 30 days, but rather let me immerse myself, be in the thick of things, let me learn by doing as much as
yeah.
I can. And um, and I think we're a company where I think everyone benefits from knowing the product well. So I would actually say, truly learn the product, do the not just the certification, but we have like a playlist of videos of like great customer calls and demos and all of that. So watch all those things so you learn truly what the customer values, what you know what makes the company tick, what makes the business grow. So watch and learn from all of those. And we're a team of company builders, so that's how we hire. We have our own formula for what makes a company builder. And if you're coming in as a leader for a team of company builders, you need to also know that you need to involve your team and help them uh, be part of making decisions. In not to say things need to be democratic, but um, you need to challenge people to take ownership of things on your team. So those are things which we want them to start doing early, involving people around them early, to assess where different folks can bring value in their org, etc. And yeah, I don't think we have one set playbook on making a exec leader successful, but very often we are late on these hires, so it just means they need to be in the
Get
thick of
right in.
things from day. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, I could probably ask you questions forever, and I love what you're building. I feel like I've never seen a great PS automation / onboarding tool until you guys. So I really enjoyed getting to know you, and thank you for taking the time just to share some wisdom on hiring and building. And congrats on the new round.
Thank you so much again, Andy. Enjoyed chatting today.
Have a great weekend. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye bye.